So in the UK recently there's been a rigorous debate about something that wouldn't usually be a hot political topic. It's not about any specific policy, but it's about the general election itself. We have a general election coming up in May. It's quite anticipated because this is a long Parliament. I think, I don't know if it'll get as much attention as the Scottish referendum, but you know, all general elections are important because we're talking about the makeup of the government. In fact, potential change of government and change of Prime Minister potentially. So it's a very critical thing. As it stands, we have had about 4.5 years of coalition government led by the Conservatives with a Liberal Democrat minority. That's been a controversial thing. I don't want to speak so much about in this video about the coalition. I'll save that for closer to the election time. But this is about the debate that has arisen, and it is about Prime Minister's questions. Now, in 2010 there was a new approach that various TV networks took, and it was a decision to include US-style Prime Ministerial debates. Of course, the idea of presidential debates is well established in the US. The famous one between Kennedy and Nixon in 1960, then there was a gap for a number of years, then it commenced again in, I think it was Ford and Carter in 1976, and then it's become something of an established tradition in the US. It would be unthinkable for a candidate of a major American party to run for president without taking part in that sort of debate. Mostly it's one-on-one Democrat versus Republican, but I believe in 92 and 96 it was a freeway system. There was Ross Perot, because he had a very strong showing for the third party, and there's been other American elections that haven't been televised where a third party has done well. George Wallace, I believe, in 1964 in the Deep South. But anyway, not about American politics. I only mention that because it is seen as an American concept. But there are other European countries that use this system. France uses it. As far as I know, Germany uses it. I'm not sure about other democratic countries. I don't know if Japan, if they have prime ministerial debates like this, because actually in the case of Japan and Italy, they seem to have stagnated government in the sense that prime ministers change seemingly every year, with one or two exceptions. So I don't know if that's the best comparison. India, I'm not sure if the Indians have prime ministerial debates, i.e. one-on-one, but other countries have presidential debates. I believe Kenya did, and Indonesia did. So this is something that's well established around the world in democratic societies, multi-party societies. So I think it's a good idea. I do have a few reservations about it, but I'll come to those in a minute. First of all, I want to get to the actual argument that is at stake. It comes down to David Cameron, the Prime Minister, is starting to be called a chicken, running scared from the elections because he hasn't confirmed that he will take part in a Prime Ministerial debate. Now, the Liberal Democrats, even though they're the junior coalition partner, and Labour have pounced on this, saying that it's disgraceful and that it shows that Cameron's scared and so on. Cameron, for his part, says he is willing to take part, but only if the Greens are allowed to take part as well. From what I gather, the Lib Dems and Labour want just a three-party debate as it was last time. But there is a compelling case for UKIP and the Greens to take part. Now, I think the left, the reason the Lib Dems and Labour don't want UKIP is because they hate UKIP and they see it as a reactionary far-right party. The Tories probably don't want UKIP because it's a rival to them. It is strange that Cameron's lobbying for the Greens to take part, and I was thinking about this. Why would a Conservative Prime Minister want the Greens to be on the platform? It's certainly not to do with democracy. Politics isn't that sportsmanlike. I think it's more to do with the fact that Cameron knows the Greens would be a good bulwark against the Liberals, for example, just as UKIP is a good bulwark against the Tories. The Greens are a good counter to the Liberal Democrats. So that's probably why he's pushing for the Greens to be on the panel. Personally, I would support that. What I'm strongly against is nationalist parties taking place, and this is why. the national parties are just that. They are national parties specifically for, especially Scotland, but also the likes of the English Democrats and Plaid Cymru. They're specifically for the home nation that they claim to represent. They're not national parties in the sense they do not represent the whole country. So it seems absurd to me to have a prime ministerial debate whereby the winner, i.e. the leader of the party who gets the most votes, would become Prime Minister of this country. Now, Nicola Sturgeon will never be Prime Minister of the UK because she doesn't want to be Prime Minister of the UK, because she is leader of the Scottish Nationalists. Now, they're saying it's fairness, it's democracy that they take part. But my point would be, why should they be allowed to take part in something that they want to destroy? Let's be quite clear about it. The Nationalists want to break up the United Kingdom. There's no point glossing it over. That's what they want. That's what independence means. It's not scaremongering, it's a fact. So I think, by all means, have political debates in Scotland, but for a national election, no, I don't see why they should have a stage on. Sure, give them time, give them a voice, that's their democratic right, but for a prime ministerial debate, and that's what these debates are, because there is quite a big emphasis on the leader, it is to determine who will be Prime Minister. Yes, it's to determine policies. Yes, it's to determine what people think of the standing of parties. But, let's be honest, Prime Ministerial debates are to determine who would be strongest as a Prime Minister. And we shouldn't underestimate the power of them. We've only had one example in this country. Generally, I think it was termed a success. And the networks got big praise for the idea. The interesting thing about that was Nick Clegg done very well. At that time, he had approval ratings higher than any leader since Winston Churchill. And he was the most popular Liberal leader since David Lloyd George. So at that time, Clegg was really flying high. So that certainly in the short term had a big effect on him. Of course, his popularity went right down when he went into government with the Tories. But that's for another video. I would support a five-way debate. Now, it can be said that on one hand the Greens and UKIP have no major parliamentary presence. I think the Greens only have one MP, UKIP has no MPs, so that there would be a compelling case therefore to say, well, wait a second, why should parties that have no heavy Westminster significance be given the same platform as major parties that do? I am someone who does believe in proportional representation. What I mean by that is political parties should be given airtime in proportion to the perceived public support that they have. If a political party seems to have a lot of grassroots support and is growing, more attention should be given to it. Now, I don't like the Greens. I would never vote for them, but I do acknowledge that they are a growing presence, so I do think they should have a place. UKIP, again, I don't like them, but I acknowledge that they have a growing influence, a grassroots campaign, and there are a lot of people sympathetic to UKIP, so it's only fair that they have a voice. And I think, people would say, well, if you give extreme parties, there's some that will call UKIP extreme, but let's say for the sake of argument the BNP was doing very well. Would the BNP be allowed in a prime ministerial debate? I think what would happen would be that other free leaders would boycott it. That's understandable, and I know there's been similar debates in France about this. I've really mixed views on that. On one hand, I am a staunch believer in freedom of expression for everyone. I don't think that we should silence people just because we don't like what they have to say and we think their views are unpleasant. On the other hand, there is a compelling argument that you give a platform to extremists when they don't deserve it, when that will only divide society. So a party like the BNP, for example, is not a party of unity at all. Now, the BNP in recent years has went way, way down, and I don't think they're going to be a serious threat in 2015. I do suspect there'll be former BNP people will go to UKIP, and that's something UKIP needs to be aware of. If Nigel Farage truly insists his party's not racist, he needs to be very wary of the sort of support that he's getting. Regarding the Greens, I'm just talking about politics now, but they again are a populist party. They sort of stand out and say, oh, look at these elitist parties, they don't listen, and They come out with some good notions. The green issue is not a trivial thing. It's a very, very important thing. There's a few things that put me off the Greens. Their attitude to crime, I think, is, well, it's typical left-wing, oh, let's feel sorry for the poor criminals sort of attitude. I have no time for that, so I would never support them, because I think if the Greens were ever in power, if we think the justice system is soft now, it would be an absolute joke if they got in. So I think that's, you know, on that issue I'm pretty conservative with a small c. So five-way debate, yeah, I think there might be a compelling case for that. Maybe what could happen is have two debates, one with all five parties, another with the big three, because realistically Nigel Farage and Caroline Lucas are not going to be Prime Minister. But they have shown that their parties have wielded significant enough influence to be included. Now, just to clarify what I mean by the nationalist parties, I accept that the Scottish National Party has a lot of support. I acknowledge that. Although I don't accept that the referendum was close. It wasn't. Actually, that's a myth that's been peddled around. There was a difference of something like 370,000, which in a small place like Scotland is a big difference. But yeah, I don't see why nationalist parties, who are against the very idea of Westminster, who are against the idea of the United Kingdom, should be allowed to take part in a prime ministerial debate in the United Kingdom general election. As I say, they should be allowed an opinion. There should be debates within Scotland. So, for example, I'd have no problem with a Scottish leaders debate, i.e. Jim Murphy, Nicola Sturgeon and others. But why should Nicola Sturgeon get to stick her nose into affairs that affect the whole country, i.e. England, Wales and Northern Ireland as well? She's a Scottish nationalist. I don't see why she should be interfering. You know, the Scottish nationalists are always talking about Westminster overbearing on Scotland. How about the Scottish National Party having a say and an influence in a general election for a country they don't even believe in? They're an anti-British party. It goes without saying. So I am staunchly against the nationalists having a position in the prime ministerial debates. Now, it has been said that the Ofcom has ruled that it is up to the individual distributors, whether that be BBC or ITV or Sky, to choose the format of their debates. That sounds, well, fair enough. Well, I say fair enough. Actually, it should be up to what people want. There is a growing campaign for the Greens to be included, and, you know, that's democracy. If the people want it, then you have to respect that. So I would say three debates. Have national debates within within Scotland, and if there is a compelling enough case within Wales, within Northern Ireland, and yes, there is more space now to argue for an English Parliament, but that's something that's still in the process. So yeah, have internal debates, but not at national level, because it's hypocritical. How can you take part in a debate it's a bit like Nigel Farage being a member of the European Parliament even though he hates the EU. You know, I think that's stupid. But anyway, yeah, so have national debates, have maybe 3 prime ministerial debates on the different networks, maybe 1 or 2 of them can include the Greens and UKIP, but in the end of the day, they do not have the same sort of councillor representation as the big 3 parties. Just to make things clear, this is what it currently is. Since the 2010 general election, as it stands, there are a total of 20,523 council positions in Great Britain at the moment, not including Northern Ireland, just in Great Britain. The Conservatives have 8,296 councillors, Labour have 7,127, and the Liberal Democrats have 2,257. Now, after that we have Independents, 1,704, but that's not a single political unit, so it's pointless even including that. The United Kingdom Independence Party, 370, and the Green Party of England and Wales, 170. Now, the Greens and UKIP have shown that they can have quite a big council presence, but it is still dwarfed by what the Conservatives, Labour and Liberals have. So for that reason, I still think that it should be the big 3 parties should have a debate among themselves, and then have another debate including the Greens and UKIP. But to say that the Greens and UKIP are the same sort of scale as the big three parties is just not true. And it's not about elitism, it is about facts. It is about representation. Those councillors were elected by the people, not by themselves. So whilst the UKIP and the Greens are making a lot of noise, I don't believe they are major parties. I believe UKIP is growing, and if there is a real fourth party, it probably is UKIP. Hell, it could be called the real third party. The Lib Dems have a real challenge from UKIP, so do the Tories. But that's what I think about it. Let me know your thoughts. This isn't about political policies, so I'm not asking about that. I'm not talking about any specific policies. I'm talking purely about political makeup and about who should and shouldn't take part in prime ministerial debates. Thank you.